Let's try one more time. How's everybody doing? Yes, that's much better. My name is Edgar B. Herwick III. I am with WGBH. I run what's called our Curiosity Desk. I don't want to necessarily bore you with exactly what that is, so flag me later on and ask me if you are intrigued about what the Curiosity Desk is. Welcome to WGBH for our second Boston Talks. Today we're going to be talking about the rise of the podcast. So how many people here, by round of applause, how many people here subscribe to or regularly listen to a or a number of podcasts? How many people here actually make podcasts? Fair amount. All right, I like it. How many people have no idea what a podcast is, but they just wanted to come out tonight? Good, that's... Same guy who said that he makes podcasts. That's pretty strange. So just to let you know how this is going to work here tonight, what we're doing is we like to think of this Boston Talks thing as a smarter happy hour. So there is beer and wine over here. There are snacks over here. You are encouraged to be a part of that. And we have 4 different speakers who are with us, and they're going to talk each for a few minutes at a time. In between, we're going to have breaks where you guys can chat with each other and hopefully chat with the people who you see up here speaking. Okay. How we doing? Conversations happening. I love it. You guys ready for our first speaker? All right. I love this guy in the front, enthusiastic. If you want to talk with an enthusiastic man, seek this man out. What's your name?
Mitch.
Where are you from, Mitch?
Arlington.
Mitch from Arlington. Most enthusiastic guy here. Round of applause for Mitch. All right, we're going to bring Carrie Hoffman up. She is the COO of PRX. Who here, round of applause, knows what PRX is, the Public Radio Exchange? Yeah. So these guys are using technology to bring stories to millions of people. I'm not going to sit here and tell you about all they do because I'm going to let Carrie do that. So let me just bring her right to the stage. Round of applause, Carrie Hoffman, COO of PRX.
Hi, everybody. I don't know if you've been watching the Twitter feed all week for this event, but I have to say that Fish Nerds kind of rocked it. I got my competitive edge on as I was watching all the promotion they were doing, and I thought, all right, every day there's a picture of a fish on Twitter. And I raise you one cute puppy. So I put my puppy up on Twitter, and they came back at me with a cute child. And I was like, damn you Fish Nerds. So I'm very happy to be here. We're very excited to talk about digital distribution and podcasts. I just wanted to mention a little bit about myself. I am what you could call a mission nerd. I've been working in nonprofit organizations my whole working life. And I started out working for the environmental group Greenpeace years ago. And we were rebels. We were very disruptive. This was in the pre-9/11 days when direct actions were powerful. And we were climbing buildings and blocking trains carrying toxic chemicals and spray painting seals and everything else that Greenpeace is well known for. And that kind of disruption was powerful, and really we were able to make some change. So years later, I work in public media. PRX is also a disruptive organization in and of itself. I haven't been arrested working for PRX, but the night is young. We'll see what happens. It is early. So PRX was founded in 2003 in the emerging growth of the internet. Before Facebook, before Twitter, before YouTube, before iPhones, and in many cases before broadband had really taken hold in many communities. It was built as a marketplace between independent public radio producers and stations. The intent was to create a marketplace where there was none, and on top of that marketplace, create an economy to run that, because there wasn't one of those either. At the time, content was distributed by satellite or by mailing CDs. So this was a pioneer move for PRX at the time. And a core part of our DNA is openness. It was built as an open platform. It remains an open platform today, and we curate and we have signature shows like The Moth and This American Life. But that openness, we believe wholeheartedly in. We believe that new talent and new voices must come through an open door. So that's part of who we are and will remain so. So 12 years later, we have amassed a very large catalog of independently produced work. That catalog is probably about 140,000 pieces, and over that 12 years, we've distributed about $3 million in royalty payments to thousands of producers. So this wasn't happening before we came on the scene, or it was happening to a smaller number of producers, for sure. Out of this catalog, we curated a stream we call PRX Remix, and the intent behind Remix was to create a back-to-back driveway moments that, almost like, rather than a programmable block of time, think of it like a DJ putting together a song list, but only it's spoken word, and it hangs together. It airs on WGBH overnight, and we've got lots of really great listener feedback. So Remix was created out of our catalog, but also we've been airing podcasts in Remix for a very long time. It's an experiment in style and format, so we're not beholden to like a specific clock. So we were able to just find stuff we liked and license it and air it and pay royalties, etc. So we started Remix in about 2008. So flash forward to 2014, and there's been like a seismic shift in what we do and what is available and happening in the podcast community. And that shift is a result of a couple of key events. One is that Apple just got better at their subscription and downloading process. Podcasts were kind of a niche thing that you had to have some technical know-how to like sort of navigate through. So that's been improved. We also saw a shift in sponsors interested in podcasts and shifting some of that money from broadcast shows. So that was kind of significant. Out of nowhere comes Welcome to Night Vale, which is, has anybody listened to Welcome to Night Vale? It's a great show, and it harkens back to the early days of storytelling on the radio, and it literally came from nowhere and soared to the top of the iTunes charts. And then, of course, we have Ira Glass, who some people refer to as the Podfather, but releases Serial. So how many people here listen to all 12 episodes of Serial? A lot. So keep your hands up if you think Adnan did it. Oh. But a really other significant thing happened in 2014, which was that Ira Glass was interviewed by Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show. So just like take a minute. For those of us in the public radio world, that's a major moment of mainstream media meeting niche. So in that interview, they aired a 2-minute video of Ira's 85-year-old neighbor subscribing to a podcast. So this is on NBC, on national television. This is unheard of, and it's almost like game over. Like now podcasts are here, Serial's now been launched with a major bang, and the tide has shifted, and we all can walk through that big open door. It was very significant. The other thing in 2014 is a lot more research was done about podcasting and podcast listeners. And the Infinite Dials, a white paper released, in their research, they determined that about 39 million people are listening to podcasts on a monthly basis. This is actually from 2014. That number is probably around 46 right now. So sounds like a very, very big number. If you put together all of the media consumption that people listen to, podcasts actually still occupy a sliver. But if you take the dive into that sliver, what they learned was that 1 out of 5 people in that sliver are listening to 6 or more podcasts in a given week. So that's an important metric for us. That's a very highly engaged listener base, and it really creates the Uber fan. In 2014, PRX also launched a podcast network called Radiotopia, and it's anchored by 99% Invisible, which is a podcast about design. Actually, probably sometime today, Roman Mars, who's the producer and host of 99% Visible, gave a TED Talk, so that's also a big moment. I'm at BostonTalks, he's at TED Talks, but the idea behind Radiotopia was to think about individuals as talent. So we were looking for individuals as opposed to looking for shows. We were producing for mobile and podcast first, broadcast second. We flipped the model of everything we'd been doing for all these years. And we also were looking for economies of scale around ad sales, promotion, marketing, cross-promotion, donations, etc. And Radiotopia is now 11 shows, and it's been successful by many, many metrics. We've tripled the audience across all the shows in the year. We were very proud. We now have a very stable base of female podcasters, producers, and hosts, which we're very proud of. And there's a number of things that, this was February of 2014. There's a number of things that we've learned in this time frame. One is that shows don't have to be huge to be successful. They can be niche. They can be about design. They can be about crime. They can even be about fish. We also learned that there's a lot of white noise. This is a field that's growing. There's a lot of white noise. Discoverability, searchability, those, and how you do promotion, how savvy you are. We are interested in working with producers who are entrepreneurs in spirit, and they are on a very specific trajectory of being able to engage in a long-term dialogue with their fan base. We also learned a lot about our fan base, and in the fall we had a Kickstarter campaign, and we raised $620,000 through the Kickstarter campaign, which was, I'm sorry to throw out so many numbers, but it's a big deal, which was to thank you. It was 248% more than our goal, and we thought our goal was actually quite ambitious. So we learned a lot about our fans. They like us. They like what we're doing. They like the narrative of what we're doing, and the shows are things that they really, really rely on. We also learned that our fan base local in Boston, we announced a party today for our backers, and in 40 minutes it sold out. We also learned that this fan base they'll do other things that we didn't think that they were interested in other mediums. So one of our backer challenges for the Strangers podcast, one of our shows, was to connect people with other people around the world and give them stationery and have them become pen pals. I mean, I was a total skeptic of this happening, but anyway, they did. So the last thing I want to say is that the name of tonight's talk is sort of the rise of podcasts. And when it's said like that, it sounds rather static. And what my experience is that this is the rising of podcasts, and it has huge headroom to grow for creators, for networks like ours, and also for public radio stations like WGBH. So thank you very much.
All right, Carrie Hoffman, hang on to that.
Oh.
I got a couple questions for you. So, for somebody like me or just anybody in this crowd here, how you're talking about all this stuff that you guys are doing at PRX. How do I encounter you? I mean, aside from you said you can listen in the overnight on 89.7, but you guys have a website. Can I go there and browse content? How does it work?
Sure. So prx.org is where you access that huge catalog that I referred to. We also have built a couple of mobile apps. We have the public radio player, which streams about 500 public radio stations around the country and about 1,000 on-demand shows free.
So not a lot of options.
Not a lot of options.
Okay.
And then we also the remix stream that I referred to. There's a remix app that's free, and it has 2 buttons on it. It's play and skip. So the Remix app is a great way to be introduced to brand new content that you've never heard before. So
cool. So that was a question for the crowd of people who said that they like to listen to podcasts. For the podcast creators, you're talking about how you guys at PRX are like identifying these, these people who are making good content or these entrepreneurial type of people. If I'm a podcast producer, how do I get my stuff in front of you? Is it as simple as using you guys and kind of uploading my content and trusting it's going to happen, or do people aggressively pitch you and say, "Hey, I've got a great idea. I want to be a part of what you do"? How does it work?
Yes.
All of it.
All of that. We get pitches all the time for podcasts, Radiotopia, for radio shows too. And like I said, because PRX is an open platform, anybody can upload content to audio files to PRX. And it is a marketplace for public radio stations, and it is also a destination for listeners. And we also curate for Remix. So there's tons of opportunity for content to be distributed. We really, like when I say that we consider ourselves a platform for talent, that's how we treat it.
Has there been an instance when you guys, somebody at PRX is kind of just, they're combing through what you guys have on there, and they find something that's been uploaded regularly and just go, "This is awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to listen to this," and then you guys have kind of put it forward somehow?
Yes, we actually had we had a viral hit. It's like the first one we had, and there's a story going around the internet for two little girls who one gives the other a haircut, and their dad recorded it. And it was on PRX, and it had been on PRX for a while. It had been on PRX for a couple years. No station had licensed it. It was like an odd 2-minute piece. He used PRX. He stuck it up there, never looked back. The Huffington Post picked it up, and then it went crazy. It actually almost crashed our servers. and within about a month, that producer was like on the Today Show and had a book deal. I mean, it was like a crazy moment, and it was literally the two little girls. And
Fish nerds, you guys listening? Excellent. All right, Carrie Hoffman, PRX.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, we're going to take a break for a little bit. You guys get another beer, talk to Carrie, talk to each other, and we'll be back shortly with Tim Murphy from Entercom. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, how we feeling? You guys are looking good, sounding good. Very important announcement before we move on to our next speaker, and that is if you haven't been over to the snack table, there's one of the most impressive plates of whoopie pies that I have ever seen in my life, which I suspect is not going to last until the end of the night. So if you want to get a piece of one of those whoopie pies, I think you should go over there now. It's happening over there. They're being eaten, consumed as we speak. So now for something completely different. Our next speaker, Tim Murphy, is with Entercom. Now, Entercom is essentially forever a broadcast network, radio stations all across the country. But of course, the podcast world is influencing the broadcast world and vice versa. And Tim's going to come up, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about how a big sort of group of 100 plus radio stations across the country, what podcasting means for them and what they mean for the future of podcasting. So let's put our hands together and welcome Tim Murphy from Entercom.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me here. This is wonderful. I'm a local kid, born and bred, grew up in Canton, Mass. Thrilled to be here. And the reason why I was thrilled to be here is I really look at this as less the rise of podcasting, it's more the rise of audio. I think audio media is just burgeoning. It's growing and expanding, and that's a combination of broadcast radio as well as podcasting. The other reason I'm happy to be here is because I'm kind of obsessed. My career has been really I worked for the Boston Globe for a long time, and I worked for Entercom. I really believe fervently that we need to find rational business models for great content. One of my biggest fears is that we have great content creators who cannot find a career, a way to make money, make a living doing it. And I think there's a real sense of urgency around finding ways to create monetization for, to use the jargon, but a way to make money doing podcasting. And so that's really my interest in coming here. Entercom is the company I work for. We run about 110 radio stations around the country. In Boston, we run WEEI, which is a sports talk station, WAAF, which is a rock station, and WRKO, which is a political talk station. But we run radio stations in 23 different markets that run the gamut from country to news talk to sports to pop, to blues to jazz, you name it. We reach about 30 million people a week with our entities. We're about a $400 million company. To give you a sense of what I mean when I talk about the audio industry, the most recent infinite dial study just came out for those of you who are interested in that kind of information. It's a public report, Edison Research, and the Triton Group published it 2 weeks ago, the Infinite Dial 2015. So 93% of the population listens to radio of any sort, broadcast radio, in the course of a week. So that's about 250 million people over the age of 12 in the country. So 93%, about 10% of the population listens to podcasts every week. So that's more about 30 million people. But about 90 million people have listened to a podcast at all in the last year, and that 10% that listen weekly to podcasts is growing very aggressively. And to the point that Kerry just made, they listen to a lot of podcasts. And oh, by the way, they tend to be affluent, well-educated, a lot of discretionary income. They're very attractive to advertisers and that sort of thing. So when we look at podcasting, we don't necessarily look at podcasting in a silo. We look at people listening to audio. Virtually 100% of the people in this country every week listen to audio, whether it be a broadcast or a podcast or something in between. And that's really exciting as an industry, I think, the audio industry. So I tend to focus on looking at the whole industry overall. How we look at it is a little bit different, and the vernacular, I think, matters here. We look at a distinction within podcasts. We look at on-demand audio or time-shifted audio versus podcast. Podcast being online-only content that is only distributed through digital and can be consumed anytime. And for us, our focus is really on time-shifted audio or on-demand audio as a subsection of podcasts. And that's really exciting for a radio broadcaster on a few levels. And I'll give you a simple example for those. I'm assuming some of the people in the room are familiar with Tom Brady. He plays football. He's handsome, tall, that sort of thing. I think he's, well-liked in this area. He does an interview every Monday morning on one of our radio stations here in Boston, the Dennis and Callahan Show. Those guys tend to be fairly polarizing, so usually when I say that, I get very strong non-verbals from the crowd. So that interview is pretty popular. What's interesting in the old world of radio, before the distribution and the smartphone made audio consumption so easy, a big radio station, usually at any one moment in time, according to Nielsen, has, if someone said, how many people do you think are listening to a popular radio station at 8 o'clock in the morning? Any sense of scale, anyone guess? It's only about 8,000 to 30,000 people. I mean, that's the range, according to Nielsen, at any one moment in time. So when you think about that, when really great audio happened in the old world, only about 8 to 30,000 people heard it. And then everything was word of mouth. Oh, did you hear that? Water cooler talk, or maybe a journalist picked it up. In the new world now, what we find is because we can clip that audio, distribute it on a podcast or on demand, we now get 10x the number of people who actually hear that piece of content, and now it's saved forever. So what happens then is that becomes a huge marketing platform for us. A lot of people who don't hear the show normally, maybe they don't have a commuting habit that's hospitable to that sort of thing, are exposed to that content. The second thing that we're really focused in on, besides making sure that content is available to people, is I think the most important part of what audio needs to do, and that's to make that search friendly. So audio really gets the raw end of the deal when you go into Google. If you search for content, they really have a predisposition or a favoritism towards written word or video. They own a little video company called YouTube. There is no audio link at the top of a search. And one of the reasons is because audio is not transcribed, or a lot of audio isn't transcribed. So we work with a company in Boston called RAMP, R-A-M-P, that was founded out of the military, actually, in World War II. It used to be used for intelligence gathering, transcribing phone calls into text. And what that does is every time we clip a piece of audio, it immediately transcribes it, but then creates web pages optimized for search and indexes them. So for example, yesterday we had an interview with a guy named Chris Nowinski, and some of you may have heard that name. He's doing really important work right now as it relates to brain trauma in football players. Chris happened to play football at Harvard. He then went on to be a professional wrestler in WWE. Chris Harvard was his character in the WWE. It's quite funny, but he actually suffered several concussions himself. and got to the point where he withdrew from sports and has dedicated his life at BU to heading up their center, they're harvesting brains, really trying to understand the impact of brain trauma on athletes and kids. But anyway, he was on our show yesterday, WEI, 2 days ago. And CTE is the name, and Edgar, you might say it for me. CTE is the acronym. It stands for chronic. Yes, thank you. So I appreciate it. So I'll give you an example of what we're doing that I think is really important to audio and to podcasting. If you go in right now on Google and search CTE or the full spelling of the condition, the very first result that comes up is that podcast from yesterday. And it's just straight to you click and it goes right into the audio. And I think that's really exciting for the industry. I think everyone in the industry really needs to focus on this. And then I also encourage everyone in the industry to get on Google's case. We've been fighting with Google because they do not treat audio as legitimately as they should, like other news gathering organizations that are either video or text driven. So we're really on a mission to take that time shifted audio, make sure it's optimized for search, and then make sure Google starts treating it like the news and the quality content it is. The final point I want to make is the advertising model. So one of the real frustrations for podcasting, as great as it is it's not really making money yet, except for the fish nerds. They are multimillionaires. And they just do this for kicks because why not, right? I'll give you a couple anecdotes. So Jeff Garland, some of you may be familiar with Jeff. He's an actor. He was famous for Curb Your Enthusiasm, but he's done a lot of other acting. He's a comedian. He has a podcast. I was listening to it recently. I really like his podcast. By the Way in Conversation is the name of the podcast. He's given up on podcasting. He did it on his podcast. He said, I'm done with this. Podcasting is great for everyone except for me. He's like, it's great for the listener. It's great for my guests because I'm pumping them up and they're selling tickets. I'm not making any money. I'm out. Bill Simmons, a very famous local guy who now lives in LA, the sports guy, works for ESPN. He has started an entity called Grantland. He has a phenomenally popular podcast called The BS Report. It's listened to by millions of people every week, every day. He was at South by Southwest this week being interviewed. He said, I don't think it's making any money, but I get paid a salary, so I don't care. Then you get guys like Mark Maron with WTF. Mark Maron makes a little bit of money, but where he really makes his money, his podcast drives a tremendous amount of attendance at his events. So when he's performing, he sells a lot of tickets now to actual performances. Bill Burr, a local comedian from my hometown of Canton, Mass., very popular, he does the same thing. Massive podcast, but he makes money indirectly through podcasting. Very few people are making money through podcasting, but it's going to happen. Podcast One is a new entity. A guy named Norm Patitz started it. He was the founder of Westwood One, and Westwood One was a major syndicating broadcast content company. This guy understands advertising. We're at the point now where there'll be enough critical mass of audio available through podcasts in the aggregate, combined with broadcast radio, where the agencies and the marketplace will start moving dollars there. But it's not there yet. It's going to take a while. So the idea, even something as popular as Serial, does not have the scale that a lot of the advertising community wants. So a big focus of us is working with other companies to pool and aggregate that content so that the marketplace that has currency, people like Nielsen start giving it ratings and currency, that sort of thing. So those are the points I wanted to make. I think I'm done. I'm getting the hook. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
All right. Hang on to it. We got a couple follow-up questions. Tim Murphy, again.
Thank you.
So the advertising thing is very interesting to me. I mean, you're sort of talking about the challenges of monetizing some of this stuff, and yet you're saying you sort of know, like with the Tom Brady thing as an example, you've got 10 times more people listening to that Tom Brady, interview. Is there? I mean, do you have a way to sort of target and say, we know that all these people are going to listen to this Tom Brady thing, there's going to be an ad specific to this Tom Brady thing? Is that happening?
Yeah, it is. So Nielsen, I'm sure you've all heard Nielsen, they do ratings for TV. Nielsen bought Arbitron. Arbitron was the company that used to do ratings for radio. So now Nielsen does ratings for TV and radio. They have a thing called C3, C5, C7. But basically what they're allowing you to do is encode time-shifted audio, and if it's listened to within a certain window, 24, 48 hours after the live broadcast, you can get credit in the ratings, and then that can be counted towards the agency world, which really buys off of those ratings. That's the currency. So that there's really important stuff happening that's allowing that to be pooled in with the currency that exists. Because if it doesn't, it's really go out, you have to hunt hard to find that advertiser. That's direct selling, hard work. If you're in the currency that already exists with the agency world, the dollars just flow to it. So Nielsen really is doing good things, I think, and I applaud the direction they're heading in.
The other thing I'm interested in is the idea of, you're talking a lot about how, you're working these radio stations where you've got hours and hours, 24 hours worth of content every day to say, let's pick the stuff that's good and time shift it and make that available in a digital space. How much thought in your companies is going toward a world where either some or all of your content needs to be native to being distributed digitally somehow? More like when you made that distinction, say a podcast. And is there like sort of a watershed moment you're looking forward to when cars have like some sort of on-demand audio native to them and people stop listening to traditional radio in the car almost exclusively?
We tend to focus more on whether people are consuming audio through broadcast signal or through digital pipes than we do about whether it's time shifted or live.
I see.
Because I think right now, getting an accurate measurement of people listening to podcasts or live broadcasts on digital, I think is the focus. So, for us, whether it's time shifted audio, meaning you take a live broadcast and clip it and make it available later versus someone doing something original, it's great audio. And it should be available to people and they should consume it as they see fit. But I think creating currency, making that audio live in that marketplace is the most important thing. And I think right now the focus for everyone is I'm going to walk into my car, the car is going to recognize my phone, I'm going to start letting my phone drive how I consume audio. That means a lot of more digital distribution is going to happen. Are we prepared to give credit to that listening and target advertising in the way that social, programmatic display, all that stuff does? And what I'm excited about is just like programmatic display advertising works on the web, I think audio is going to work the same way. You'll get a different ad on the same piece of audio than I'll get based on my habits, behaviors, first-party data, all that kind of stuff.
All right, Tim Murphy.
Thank you.
If you guys have questions for him, we're going to take another one of these breaks. You can track him down, and I'll take that from your hands. Yeah, I forgot to say, if you need an icebreaker with Tim is one of 9 children. You have 8 brothers and sisters. And on top of that, they were all born in a 10-year span. So his mother had 9 children over the course of 10 years. That's amazing. All right, we'll be back in a few minutes with the Fish Nerds. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is nerd time. Who's ready for the Fish Nerds? That does not sound like a crowd that is ready for the Fish Nerds. I heard when they first had the idea for the Fish Nerds podcast, they talked to some of their friends about it, and one of their friends said, "Guys, that sounds like the kind of thing that tens of people would be interested in." And yet, they're slowly building an empire. So we've heard from some folks who are involved in distribution. We've heard from about how it's being approached from the corporate level, and now a couple of guys who are out there every day, including tonight, making the podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Clay Groves and Dave Kellen, the Fish Nerds!
Very good. It started 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we decided to do something that if we died, we would be known for. And what that was to catch and eat every kind of freshwater fish in New Hampshire. Nobody's ever done it. So what we did, there's 48 species of fish. We tried to catch and eat them all. Now, we had some rules. One of the rules was that we had to keep the first legal size one that we caught of each species.
It didn't matter how big that first legal size was. So the second fish we decided to hunt for was a yellow perch, a little native New Hampshire fish that can get to 2 pounds. But the one we caught up in a small town in New Hampshire called Effingham. Anyone ever hear of Effingham, New Hampshire?
Effingham,
Really?
yes.
Great. For those of you guys who are in the Boston area, it's wicked far north. okay? Way up there. It's on Lake Ossipee, and we walked out onto Lake in Effingham. We drilled 1,000 holes, fished all day, caught one tiny little yellow perch, 3 inches long.
It's that long.
But quest rules dictate we must kill. That's right, we kill things.
Yeah, we killed it. There's no
We
other
must
way.
kill and eat the very first legal example of each fish we catch. So we wanted to celebrate the life of this fish who died for us. And we did. We made a recipe and named it for the town we caught in. We made an Effingham sandwich. The ingredients for this, you take one effing small fish, you put it on an effing bulky roll with an effing piece of ham and some effing cheese, and you eat it. And guess what? It's effing delicious.
So that's what happened. We got all these great stories throughout this whole quest. 48 fish. We got them all. Thank you very much. Clap, please. Clap. Thank you.
Killed them all.
The last one was a state record channel catfish. I have my badge right here. Very good, very good.
I got to work the net.
He did get to hold the net. And we decided to write stories, and we got it in all the newspapers and those kinds of things. But then the quest ended, and we completed it, and we had the stories. So then we decided to do a podcast. Now, we are nerdy, right? So when you say fish nerd to somebody, they get it. And one of the things when we were talking to people in the audience, we asked, what kind of nerds are you, right? And we got a bunch of responses. Out there in the audience, there's a baseball nerd. Very good. There's a fashion nerd out there. Very good. There's a movie nerd out there among you, and there's a sex nerd out there among you. I'm just going to keep that.
Okay. Where's Edgar?
Edgar, we need Edgar.
Where's Edgar? Come on up here. So our show, we got together, and we had never made a radio show or done audio before, and our first shows kind of sucked. Don't listen to number 1, please. If you're listening to our shows, get the newest ones first. But we had to break it down into segments, and we came up with about 783 different segments for our show, which made our show about 4 years long. We had to break it down. So we have 6 segments here. Edgar's going to hold this for us, and it's upside down. All right. And this, by the way, is called Eel of Fortune. So whenever we spin this, you guys yell, Eel of Fortune! And we're going to spin this, and we're going to do our show right now live for you here at WGBH.
Yay!
Woo! And we're going to do the segments that are outlined on here. We have right here an effing minute. By the way, that means Fish Nerds Minute. That's our biology segment. We, on our show, have a biologist named Doc Martin from Kansas who does all the stuff we don't do, which is get the facts right. Right? We have a cooking segment here. You want to jump in, you can.
You're doing great.
We've got a cooking segment that we have a friend named Hugo Medeiros from the Cape who's like a seagull. He eats everything. And he can cook anything. So he does those segments for us.
He's Portuguese.
Portuguese. That helps you if you like culture. I guess that's culture. We do fish in the news, so we pretend to be relevant. We've got a call-in feature for our show called Stump the Fish Nerds, and we know there's some audience questions later will come up. We do a Fish Nerds quiz with all of our guests that may come up, and of course we have fishy fails, and there are a lot of them. Our show sometimes is a fishy fail.
Yes, it's very exciting. And so now you are going to participate in this. We're going to spin the Eel of Fortune, and we'll do the test here. And people think, fish nerds, wow, that's the most niche-y thing I've ever heard, right? Actually, fish are a universal thing, right? There's fish all over the world, and the actual act of catching a fish and pulling it out of the water is a universal thing. So if you've done that in your life, you share the same things as somebody in Kenya or in Japan or something like that. So spin that wheel.
Eel of Fortune! First up, fishy fails. Go for it, Dave.
Fails.
Yeah.
Very good. So, oh God. All right. So the fishy fails. This is some of the stories from our website. We're just going to blow through these. Fishermen like jokes, and they put together all these weird lures. So there's a lure, seriously, called a deadly dick. It's not my fault. But the funny thing is, Clay didn't know about a deadly dick, and he has one right there, a deadly dick. And I sent him off to Dick's Trading Post to ask for a deadly dick as one of our segments. How did it go?
So I went into Dick's Sporting Goods, and I had never seen a deadly dick in my life, and I walked up to this beautiful woman. And my wife is beautiful, by the way. It makes me nervous.
Very beautiful.
And just me to say that out loud. But most beautiful women make me nervous. If you notice, I'm walking around talking to guys tonight because I am afraid of girls. So I walked into this beautiful sales clerk, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a deadly dick." And she went, "Oh, yeah, I'll give you some help. And then she sends this big hairy guy over to talk to me. And I said, I'm looking for a deadly dick. And they thought I was putting them on. And it turns out not one person in the store ever heard of them, but hold it up. Hold it up.
It's a product. It's real.
Guess where you can buy those? Dick's Sporting Goods. They sell them.
Very good.
But they didn't know. Fishy
So
fail.
let's spin the eel of fortune. Very good for those participation points.
Quiz.
Very good. You got the quiz.
I got the quiz. All right, so we're going to do a little fishy quiz here. And this one, I need a volunteer.
Yeah, right back there.
Come on, yeah.
Come up front. Yay.
I don't know who I pointed at. I just did this. Yeah. What is your name?
Kim.
Hey.
Kim, this quiz is called, is it a Muppet or is it a fishing lure? Hold this, please. All right, now put that in
So
my
is it
face.
a Muppet or is it a fishing
And then when
lure?
you answer, you put it back in your face. See how that, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Oh,
Okay.
hello.
So, Kim, that's a louder microphone.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we only ask one. We have about 30 of these, but we don't have time. So one, is it a Muppet or a fishing lure? So I'm going to give you 3 choices. 2 of them are lures. One's a Muppet. Do you guys know what Muppets are? Yeah.
Yes.
Some of these hipsters, you don't know. Okay. So Sneaky Pete, Timmy Monster, or Parachute Adams? Which one's a Muppet?
Yeah, say them one more time.
You're not the boss of me. All right. Sneaky Pete, Timmy Monster, or Parachute Adams?
Sneaky Pete.
I'm sorry. No. Does anyone know it? Timmy Monster. I'm sorry. You lose. I'm so sorry.
What could I have won?
You could have won a free membership to the Fish Nerds podcast, which you can still have.
All right, thank you.
Very good. Spielberg,
right.
I think we have time for one more.
Yeah.
Spin the eel of
fortune.
Woo!
Oh, we got we got fish in the news.
Fish in the news.
Fish in the news.
This Fish in the News, this is a regular segment of the Fish Nerds podcast, comes from the Huffington Post. This thing was reproduced 9 times in the last year.
Many people don't know this, Dave, but the Huff Post reuses stuff over and over and over.
And over and over again. And this showed up with every state. So the title of this Fish in the News was Pacu-mageddon. Pacu-mageddon, large testicle-eating fish surfaces in Washington state. Ooh. So the story goes is that they found this large piranha-looking fish with human teeth.
So just sit me here for a second. A pacu looks like, imagine a fish with like your grandma's dentures in its face. That's a pacu.
Exactly. And during their regular fisheries research, they found some, and they do this all the time, by the way, because aquarists keep them and they dump them in rivers. So there's probably been a pacu found in the Charles River, I would think. But so this idea of testicle-eating fish, Clay, tell us where testicle-eating fish story came from.
Okay, so Jeremy Wade. Do you guys know who Jeremy Wade is? All right, so he does this TV show. I don't know where he's from. He's got some crazy accent. But he travels around the world and he pretends there's these things called river monsters. And he went and found these stories of a fish that eats nuts. And this is in the literal sense. He found a pacu that actually eats nuts that fall from trees.
They are vegetarians in the Amazon River.
Vegetarians. And he surmised during his quest to catch all these river monsters that he would go after this nut-eating fish in the Amazon. And he found these pacus. And he told this grand story about locals who swim naked and are afraid of this pacu. Now, we call this what, Dave?
We call this a fishing fail.
We call this a pacu of lies.
a pacu of lies.
We call this a pacu of lies. And by the way, just in case, just so you know, we're clear, Dave and I are both confirmed never nudes. We don't swim naked.
Right.
Yeah, ever.
Because we know better.
So,
Yes, you're welcome.
do we have time for one more?
Do we have time for one more, or is Edgar going to ruin the fun? Do we have time for one more? Yes! Very good. Eel of fortune!
Stump the Fish Nerds! So
Very
for this
good.
segment, we have a call-in segment of our show, and people call in with questions. Does anyone have a Fish Nerd question for us in the audience? Just yell them out. And if just yell them.
Oh, there's one right there.
Right out. Where are they?
Which is higher on the
Uh-oh.
food chain, Swedish fish or goldfish?
Everyone knows it's Swedish fish. Where are shills? We put shills in the
Yeah,
audience
we
here.
did put shills.
Where are
did they
they?
go? There's one. Why didn't you
you-
hold up your
why-
hand
where are
immediately?
you?
You
Will
let
you
that guy
please-
in.
So I have a question.
Yes, read it from the card.
Why is my ice hole dirty?
Ah, yes.
All right, the question is, why is her ice hole dirty? Very common question when you're ice fishing. Dave, you want to handle this?
We did actually get this question on our Fish Nerds hotline, is why my ice hole is dirty. This guy called it from Massachusetts. I think it was from Methuen or something.
Right.
Probably there.
Yeah,
And,
everyone's from Methuen.
He goes, while I'm ice fishing, my hole starts getting muddy and fuzzy, and I don't know why it is. What was the answer, we think?
So the exciting answer to this question is it has to do with the high pressure systems and low pressure systems. It's the weather. So in a high pressure system, the air pressure is strong and it pushes all the stuff in the water column down to the bottom. In a low pressure system, all the detritus, all the little bits and fungal pieces and who knows what floats up from the bottom and dirties up your ice hole. So that is why your ice hole is dirty.
Very good. So there's
So
the answer.
wrap it up, Dave. Wrap it up.
So that is it. We're going to end it like our podcast. That is it. You have wasted 10 minutes when you should have been doing something else.
So until next time, remember the code of the fish nerds: spawn early and often,
Avoid free lunches with strings attached.
and swim against the current every chance you get.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dave and Clay, the Fish Nerds.
Yay!
Gentlemen, full-time job for you guys doing this or what?
Actually, surprisingly, it is for me right now.
Yeah.
So I was really interested in
A little
the
bit of a downturn in the
yes,
economy.
the monetization angle I'm very interested in. But Clay is a teacher educator. Yeah, very
Yeah, so
good.
you-
Teacher. Let's hear it for teachers. Yep, very good. Yep.
Wicked smart.
How how much time does it take to do what you guys do? You have another full-time job.
It takes me 1 hour. It takes Dave about 17. He gets paid a lot more. He makes about 12 cents an hour.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, so podcasting, it's a labor of love. So how do you count that? But
You measure it, Dave. You would just get a clock out. You would
measure
put a
it.
timer on. You measure it.
Lawyers do it all the time. They figure it out.
Exactly. Well, one of the interesting things is Clay lives like an hour and a half away from me in North Conway. I live in Exeter, New Hampshire. We're New Hampshireans. And we end up recording separately and work it out that way. So thank God for digital technology and the internet, because that saves tons of travel time.
So I know you sort of were half jokingly saying earlier, like, we didn't know anything about this. We just had this idea. We started doing it. Don't listen to our earlier shows.
That's not a joke.
Full joke.
Totally honest.
Full serious. For somebody who's in the crowd here, who's interested in podcasts, somebody who is thinking, I kind of want to do this, but they're stopping themselves from getting started, what's the advice you have?
Well, real quick, I'm a father. I have a 17-year-old daughter, and she's seen me start some weird things. I started the leftist marching band in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And I also started this podcast. And I think of it as a parenting thing, because I'm trying to show her that don't wait for somebody to let you do what you want to do. You just do it, right? And especially with the internet and the digital world. So podcasting is great because you can just do it. And there's tons of resources online. You want to talk about some of the online resources to help people podcast?
No.
Oh.
There's just 1,000 other podcasts. What I recommend you do is, first of all, find other people who podcast. First thing you're going to do tonight is you're going to go home and you're going to go find the Fish Nerds podcast and you're going to download it. You're going to listen to it and go, man, these guys got it. Then you're going to find other podcast friends podcasts, listen to their shows, make some notes, and then listen to a podcast about podcasting. There's a ton of them.
Yeah.
And
really
that will
exciting.
help you kind of get it together. And then email us questions and say, hey, I was trying to do this, it didn't work out. How did you solve this problem? And we will tell you. So
Yeah, it's true. And honestly, ice fishermen are super friendly, but podcasters tend to be even more friendly, especially the ones that aren't sponsored by somebody, because we're all just trying to figure it out.
how many other podcasters in the room? Raise your hand real high.
Raise your hand. Yeah, look at those
Others.
friendly people.
So I see Big Buck Registry. I see a climate change podcast. I see Scrum. Where's Scrum? Scrum.
Yeah,
Which one are
very good.
you? Yeah. Black,
Yes.
Sexy, Geeky, and Mental. So all those shows you should be downloading. Tweet them all out to hashtag BostonTalks, and everyone in this room download those shows. That's how you help people get better at this.
There it is. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, Dave and Clay, the Fish Nerds. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to have all of our speakers up here for just a little quick Q&A. So hang tight. We'll be right back. Up to the stage, all of our speakers. Tim Murphy, first one. You win a prize. There's the Fish Nerds. There's Carrie. Round of applause for them, folks. By the way, there's still a remarkable number of whoopie pies still available over at the... In fact, there's a lot of snacks still over at the snack table. So if you haven't made your way over there, now would be the time. So we're just going to kind of close out the evening here with a little bit more of an open forum kind of Q&A thing. And actually, I was going to ask some questions, but it occurs to me that I'd sort of like to know what you guys think. So does anybody out there have a question that they want to throw either to somebody specifically here or just generally to everybody to get their take on something? What do you got? What's your name?
Mitch.
Mitch.
Tim, you talked about, the measuring the listenership for podcasts, including, later listening. How do they capture that?
Broadcast streams are what they call encoded. And so the encoding allows Nielsen... The long story short, they have what they now call people meters, which are panelists who it used to be you filled out a diary if you were a rating panelist and wrote down what you watched on TV or listened to in radio. It's incredibly inaccurate. It's amazing to me that all these dollars get traded on people's memory of what they listen to. Now they have a little personal people meter they wear in their belt, and that picks up literally the encoded audio, kind of like how Shazam picks up a song, and then it captures that listening.
Clay and Dave, for you guys, do you guys as podcast makers, do you have access to know how many people are listening to what you're doing, who's listening? How does that work for you guys?
Yeah, there's a couple services that we actually have to pay for and subscribe to. Blueberry's one. There's a couple other ones, but you can get statistics on listenership. iTunes, the evil son of a, they don't share any of that information. No, the iTunes does not get a portion. No.
But incidentally, iTunes ranks all the podcasts, so they have these numbers. We're currently, tonight, we are number 268 in the outdoor podcast. There's about 1,500 of them. Thank you. Yeah. If every single one of you in the room tonight downloads our show, maybe we'll be number 264. Yeah, you never know.
How important are numbers for you, Carrie? Is that a listener numbers? How deep into that are you guys digging?
We pay attention very much to metrics. The way we say it, though, is audience is actually the currency. And once you get enough audience, then all kinds of things can happen with either donations or sponsorships. But audience is the most important metric that we pay attention to, the size of the audience and downloads.
So I have a question kind of for all of you. You had asked earlier about Serial, and I think just about everybody's hand went up. Can I see it again? How many people have listened to Serial? How big a deal is this for the world of podcasts? Is it, the classic game changer or not? Is it just sort of a blip that there was this one thing that everybody listened to and it doesn't really mean that much for the future of podcasting? Carrie?
I mean, I think it's a huge deal because, as I was saying, it was designed to be a podcast. So, if you look at the top of the iTunes charts, like these guys were saying, there's a lot of public radio shows there that have great audience reach, and then, their podcasts are time shifted or something like that. So Serial is a real breakout because it was designed to be a digital property, and it may never be on public radio, or it may be never on any other kind of media. We'll see. But so it's a huge game changer in our world for sure.
Tim, how about for you, Tim, in the corporate space? You guys paying attention to that?
Well, first of all, as a fan, I mean, it's a game changer. I think the storytelling was so amazingly good and compelling, and it's exciting. But the thing that's interesting is Serial, its launching pad was a major broadcast entity. I mean, This American Life, Ira Glass. I mean, he gave that the lift. I mean, he told everyone, listen to this. He inserted it in his regular time slot. So it had a massive built-in audience to start from. Now, it earned that audience from there and grew it. And I think what it shows is there still has to be a mix of broadcast and digital. I don't think a digital-only broadcast without Ira Glass pitching it hard, early, would have done what Serial did. So I think it's great, though. It shows that it can be successful, but it also shows you still need a mass reach vehicle to give it some weight and some lift out of the box. So, old media, new media, they're all good, but they work together, too, in certain ways.
Yeah, did you hear that, fish nerds? It's because you don't have the broadcast thing, right?
Just give
But
give
is
us
that
a day
inspiring
or two.
when you see that? When you see something like Serial, and all of a sudden, everywhere you go, there's an article about podcasts. People that have never listened to podcasting are like talking to you guys about podcasts. Are you like, we've been doing that for 3 years. Where have you been? Or is it inspiring for you, saying like, well, this is where we can get to?
Well, it definitely gives us hope, because I think it's a rising tide's going to lift everything up, and it's going to let amateurs bring content that isn't being provided right there, right now. So for me, it's very inspiring. So.
Yes.
Tell us what Serial is.
Nice. Yes. Good.
Anybody want to take that?
Serial is a 12-episode podcast that was produced by the staff at This American Life, and it looked back at a cold case, a murder in Baltimore in the late 80s. And it's a true detective investigation, relook at evidence, followed the court trial, et cetera. And so, crime is an important genre in all media consumption, and so Serial used the art of storytelling that was honed and crafted at This American Life and applied it to this journalistic style reporting, and it was a huge hit.
And it's, just for the record, it's Serial, S-E, yeah, with an S, not cereal. This is a delicious bowl of Captain Crunch.
It wasn't a Kellogg's branded podcast.
Hi, what's your name?
Dawn.
Dawn.
I want to ask about the podcast Startup, which is about podcasting and that's sort of got me started on lots of podcasts, but anyway.
What are your thoughts on a podcast startup about podcasting? Have we gotten too meta too quickly?
Well, I know Clay has opinions on that.
Give me both. It's funny because we heard about Startup when it first started up, and that's Alex Bloomberg, and he comes directly from Planet Money and This American Life and that whole kind of genre. And it was compelling because he was putting out there his business model, and there is no business model for a podcast, which is, we want to be business model. We want to make money. We haven't figured that out. You guys can help us. But there's no current model for it, and so it was nice to see someone do it and put it out there, and it gives us inspiration. Really hard, though, as an amateur coming from the bottom up, going, but we don't have your connections, but that's the hard part.
It's interesting that I had a conversation at break. There is a business model. It might not be a satisfying business model to you. Yeah. When I was talking about the Mark Maron model with WTF or Bill Burr, a lot of comedians use podcasts. The podcast doesn't make money, but it drives ticket sales. So there's a company called HubSpot based out of Cambridge that went public recently. Wildly successful company, great idea, really good people. But their whole model is based on this idea of content marketing, and their theory is advertising's dead, meaning the old traditional 30-second ad is dead. But if you have good content, that's advertising now, and people will hire you for your services. So if you have a great podcast, the business model today really is about use the podcast to get people interested in hiring you as a consultant, coming to a trade show you host, hiring you to come curate a fishing trip through the Louisiana Basin. But the podcast itself is probably not going to be a revenue generator in the near term, but it's a great content marketing piece. So that's a business model.
Peter Kadzis from WGBH, as the scrum here just pointed out to me, and he makes a good point. I think it's increasingly so like this in the music industry. The Rolling Stones didn't make money on their albums; they made money on their tours, right? And it's sort of the same thing. It's increasingly so for artists now in the digital space.
And that's Pandora's claim to why they don't run commercials, which is a whole other topic.
Go ahead, Carrie.
I just want to add to that like and the fish nerds can attest to this, that today's podcasters have to be entrepreneurs. They just have to be. You do a lot yourself. It's a vertical stack, and you just have to embrace that and find efficiencies where you can. But you have to have an entrepreneurial mindset in order to survive.
Where do you find your audiences? The question was, where do you find your audiences? They find us.
Yeah. If you're asking the fish nerds where our audience comes from, first we do this kind of thing. So just like Tim was saying, we show up. From the very beginning of our quest, we were on the phone and emailing both Boston Public Radio, New Hampshire Public Radio, every small media outlet. We've been on dozens of TV shows, New Hampshire Chronicle, everything. And every single one is a blip, just a little bit more, and it adds up.
And I don't know, you know Jim and Marjorie, right? Jim and Marjorie of the Boston Public Radio.
Boston Public Radio. Round of applause for
very
Jim and
good, very
Marjorie.
good. We asked them, we ran into Jim in the bathroom. I ran into Jim while he was peeing. And I asked him, I said, hey, Jim, we would take you fishing. You know, you want to go fishing? And he said, yes.
True.
And Edgar brought him out.
I was there. I did. I did. It was very cold.
So wrap your mind around that. A couple fish nerds took Jim and Marjorie out fishing in New Hampshire on a frozen lake. It was awesome.
All right, so unfortunately we're just about out of time. So I want to ask you guys all if you can just, as a final sum up. I know we've sort of heard a bunch of podcast names and things kind of thrown at people. If you had to recommend, besides the fish nerds, one podcast that people, especially if they haven't been listening to podcasts in the past, or even if they're big fans, what's one thing that somebody should go away here tonight and download and start listening to?
I'm a big fan of the Big Buck Registry.
Big Buck Registry. Who's here, right? So what's Big Buck? Give me your elevator pitch. What's Big Buck Registry?
Big Buck Registry is a deer hunting podcast similar to an outdoor thing. So I'm not surprised that these guys recommended me, but I'm not sure this is the exact crowd that we'd be bringing out. But if you like deer hunting, that's what we're all about.
All right, so there you go. Carrie, what would you say?
You're really making this hard for me. You know, we have a podcast network of 11 shows that we equally love. But
I'm not asking for your favorite. I'm asking for just one right now.
If I had
that's
to name one,
indispensable.
I would say Criminal, hosted by two women. And if you like cereal, you'll love Criminal.
There you go, Criminal. All right, Clay, what do you got?
Currently, my favorite podcast is Matt and Mattingly's Ice Cream Social. That's out of Las Vegas. It's a spinoff of Penn Jillette's podcast, which is Penn Sunday School. So,
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right, good recommendation. How about you, Tim?
This is just because it's fresh in my mind. Radio Lab is one you're familiar with, but last week's episode, Fugo. If you're a World War II historian, it will blow your mind. It's one of the most compelling pieces of history I've ever heard in my life. So run, don't walk to listen to that.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for our panel here, the rise of the podcast. Thank you guys all for coming out for Boston Talks. Hashtag us on Twitter at BostonTalks. Hang out, maybe, eat the rest of the snacks, and everybody get home safely. Thank you guys for coming.